Hello there, I'm Kyo Saroni Beatmaker, and on this episode of the Monday Mindset, we're going to be talking about patience. Patience is a virtue. As cliche as that may sound, there is a level of truth to it. For any situation you find yourself in, allow yourself a bit of patience. Having patience allows your mind to expand in the moment, to search for clarity in the chaos of thoughts, feelings, and actions. But patience requires discipline. Many of us struggle with the discipline that comes with being patient. And I think for me, I had to learn. Um, I think there are. Before I get into my example, I think there are various aspects of um, patience that we have to learn. And what I mean by that, I think as you get older, more responsibilities, are put onto your plate, patience when it comes to work related responsibilities and situations, patience when it comes to personal issues and responsibilities, patience when it comes to relationships, whether it's with family, significant other, friends. Essentially, what I'm just kind of talking about is that there are different aspects of patience, and in those aspects of patience, it it's a little different. It requires maybe more patience, maybe less, whatever. Um, but what I was trying to use for an example for me personally, um, you know, I had to learn how to be patient very early on in my life. Um, and back then, there weren't no cell phones. Um, so, for example, like when my mom, I used to do rec basketball. So it was like recreational basketball for the town that I lived in. And it was only during practice, my mom would drop me off and she would leave for work or she would be at work. Because I would either stay at the school, or she would pick me up and then keep going to work. She would do overtime. And there were times, many many times, where you know practice would end at 5, but it's like 6 o'clock, 6:30. At that point, the custodian's like, "Hey, you're gonna have to wait outside. I gotta go home." So then I'm waiting outside in the cold in the snow, waiting for my mom to get there. And yeah, she'd eventually come pick me up, and I'm exaggerating, kind of, not really. There were some times where I was waiting. I always kind of use this joke that, she'd be pulling up to the school, whipping in fast and being like, "Oh my God, I was home and I started cooking dinner and I made dinner and then there was no one there to eat and then I forgot to pick you up." And I'll be honest, like, even at the age of 24, I will never forget there was literally one time that my mom forgot to pick me up. My mom forgot to pick me up because she was at church. Well, she was at a meeting with some friends from church. They were having a little prayer session together, and I just think it's so funny that, hey, you know, Jesus comes first before your firstborn and only child. Excuse me. I just think it's so funny. And even then, like, at that point, cell phones are a thing. So I'd be like texting my mom, like, "Bro, like, where are you?" And then the best part would be she'll be like 45 minutes late, sometimes even an hour, comes to pick me up, and she's the one with the attitude. Oh God. Um, but all I'm trying to say is, like, patience is not an easy thing. And even in those moments, like, I would be, upset and frustrated with my mom, but like I learned not to try to take it out, you know, on her. And I think that's one of the biggest issues when it comes with, with the patience is the reaction. Like, how long can you maintain your patience before you, in most cases, many of us overreact. And when you overreact because your patience, you're fed up, you've been building yourself up inside, saying all these things, saying what you're gonna say, expressing how you're gonna feel, and boom, you just let it all out. And most often than not, it's a consequence. And you end up screwing yourself over, you end up hurting the other person. And, like for my example, like, my mom, don't get me wrong, she's an amazing woman. I love her to death. And as you can see earlier, I was making light of the fact that she would be late. But she was a single parent and she worked for the state. And anyone who has parents that work for the state, especially if they're single parents, especially if they're moms, it doesn't matter if they're moms or dads, if they're a single parent and you understand that, you know how much they sacrifice and all the hours and time and investment that they give into you as well as the job. So I'm not trying to disparage my mom. I'm only saying that, a lot of us, you know, we end up having to grow up early. And growing up early, especially if you're in a household where you have to grow up early, whether, for me, I was an only child and it was just me and my mom, but there were more responsibilities that I had to take on as I got older that my mom needed help with. And anyone can relate to that, especially if you have siblings and you were the oldest, or maybe you were the middle child and you had to take care of the oldest, whatever the situation is. When you have to grow up early, the level of patience that you need is is crucial. And don't get me wrong, like, there are plenty of moments where, I was really frustrated with my mom and she could tell, but I never like yelled at her or like I would kind of complain, but like I would keep it within reason. And like I said, she would get mad at me, but I think it was more of the fact that she knew how I was going to react. And then she knew, which is hilarious. My mom would not only be late to pick me up, but then want to go run errands. And I'm like, bro, I just been at work for 8 hours working with middle schoolers. I would like to go home and relax. um, so but what I'm trying to say is that you know, growing up, when you have to grow up early in life, patience is a virtue because you're gonna need that patience no matter what's going on. Even for myself, there are times where, my mom would have to, work late or she'd get called out. She would work overtime at night. So if there was an emergency, she would wake me up in the middle of the night and be like, "Hey, I gotta go." Or sometimes I would go with her and then have to go to school and live life and you have to be patient. As I got older, my responsibilities became more and more, and I was already kind of building that mentality that it was bigger than me. So the patience that I built for myself came from the life experiences I had with my mom. And many times, near before she retired, you know, I would be driving her to meet with clients, and it could be late at night. And I may have work, but we only had one car, and we had to do this together. And I'm using these examples to show you where my patience came from, the experiences that I had where there really wasn't any other option. I had to be patient. Now, like I said early on, there are different aspects of patience, and this was one form of patience that I learned with my family. And that's why I said earlier, like, the patience that you're going to have with your family is going to be completely different from the patience you have with your friends or your employer or your, fellow employees. So, but that doesn't mean that you can't translate that patience to other aspects of your life that you're struggling with in terms of patience. I know it sounds like patience, 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 patience. I feel like the meme from Always Sunny in Philadelphia, just connecting everything together for the about the mail. But like the patience that I learned with my mom, it helped me learn how to translate that into working with kids when I started having a job. I worked a lot with kids. I worked in the special services, and I did a lot of volunteer work working with young kids, if they were special needs or or not. So I understood, you know, being patient with my mom because um, the fact is that like my mom, as she was getting older, I had to kind of slow down myself. I couldn't be as fast because I couldn't get as frustrated with her because maybe she was struggling with some technology, or maybe she was already overwhelmed, and I needed to take a step back and focus my attention to her, especially when she had surgery and her lung collapse and she was out of work for several months. Like I was her sole care provider and taking care of the house. And that happened when I was in high school, and still had to do my schoolwork, hang out with friends, do activities and take care of my mom. And that's why I kind of bring up that, for me, that patience of having to like slow down and really think about the situation that I'm in. I had to apply that working with kids, especially when I'm working with kids who are special needs. I need to slow down, especially when I'm in responsible of a bunch of kids and I have to help, the teacher. I was a paraprofessional. And so, you know, I had to slow down, especially when I'm working with special need kids, and being able to see the environment, be aware of what's going on. And a lot of that I credit honestly to my mom. She would kind of, in situations when I was younger and we were out and about, she would take scenarios or things that happened, um, and she would apply it to what she did for a job and for me. For an example, when I was younger, um, my mom saw a woman abusing her child in public, and my mom calmly went over to the woman and confronted her about it and told her that that wasn't right. And then my mom came back to me and asked me, why is that not right to abuse your child in public? And why did I go over there? And I had to explain to her explain to my mom why she made those choices. Um, or, one time there was a syringe in a parking lot. My mom brought me over and she's like, what is that? It's like, I'm like, that's a syringe. And she's like, okay, what do you see when things like that happen? If you see things like that, you walk away, you don't look at it, you don't touch it. So, you know, not everyone is fortunate enough to have a parent or parents. I only had my mom to invest that kind of time in them, to train them in a sense, to apply what they've learned from their jobs and apply it to how to raise me. That forced me to have to be patient. And you know when I was working with kids, I had to think about every time when every kid was interacting or anything. And like how I said earlier, having patience allows your mind to expand in the moment. You know, for an example, there was a child that I worked with special needs, and he was like hugging a schoolmate, and then out of nowhere, he just put that schoolmate in a headlock and started choking him. All right. Now, granted, this kid is in third grade, but if you are someone who have worked with children who have Down syndrome or are on that form of spectrum, or have children who are in that spectrum yourself, you know how physically powerful they can be. So here I am, over 200 pounds, and I'm trying to get him to stop choking the schoolmate. And I'm fortunate that the schoolmate was very self-aware of what was going on and was being very calm. He wasn't freaking out or anything like that because that could have made the situation even much worse. So as I'm struggling, and I needed help, I looked over to the third grade teacher and I was like, "Ah, can you please come over? I need your help." She looked at me and she immediately walked away. So in a moment like that, most people would panic. They wouldn't know what to do. They'd be freaking out. And I'm also, like I said, I'm a big guy. I'm over 200 pounds. I can't use Hulk strength on this kid. I could break his arm. I could hurt the other child. So, literally in that moment, I don't know how I did it. The next thing I know, I was running down to the case manager's room. I was able to somewhat get him to kind of not choke him as much. I don't know how I get it. I was in the case manager's room telling her the situation, begging for her help. She refused to get up and help me. Next thing I know, I'm back in the classroom. I was eventually able to get my student off of the other his classmate and stop choking him. I need a drink. I'm bringing up that story because that is to me a really great example of how important it is to be patient in the moment, especially when it comes to confrontations, whether it's forbid it be a physical confrontation. I don't want anyone to experience any kind of physical confrontation. Neither do I myself personally. But in this situation, like, anyone could have overreacted. Anyone, you could have panicked. You could have freaked out. But the experiences of the patients that I've had with my mom, growing up with her, and other situations in my family, like, and my mom kind of, even when I started working with kids, would kind of talk to me how to work with kids, how to handle them, things like that. But also, I have to give you guys a little side note. I had no resistance training with working with kids who have those kind of issues. None. All right. They had me doing things that to say the least, if any local news outlet found out about it, would have been an incident. But despite that, I needed to do my job. So I was able to get the situation under hand, but like, the amount of patience it took for me to be in the moment, each moment, to not overreact, to not hurt either of the students. I didn't even bruise him. And that was another thing I had to take in consideration. Like, I don't have any resistance training in this. I'm not certified to do any kind of resistance training. So if I bruise him or anything like that, that's it. That's a wrap. My job is over. There's no protection. There's no protection. Working in the education system, working as a paraprofessional, the even as a teacher, there's just no protection anymore. That No Child Left Behind Act was really the leave all the teachers behind and aides. But I digress. I could go on and on about my thoughts on the educational system. If that's something people are interested in, please leave a comment with your thoughts below. But this patience that I'm talking about, like I was saying, patience is not taught, it's learned. And for me, many of my life experiences that I have had leading up to now, and I'm 29, I had to learn patience. And don't get me wrong, like I was saying about this patience when it comes to work. I could, there was when I kept on working in the school system for years. And when I started working in high school system, um, I was working with a child, a young boy, a young man, I should say, because he was in eighth grade. And you alive over there, Pablo? All right, Pobs is alive. um, he was transferring. Oh man, you okay? You good? He's an old man, so yeah. Occasionally, he's coughing up what little life he has. um, but he was transferring over to high school, so I had to start working in the high school system. And let me tell you, middle school is easier. Working in the high school system, nope. The patience for that, oh boy, you gotta have some real good patience. I'll tell you. And I'll tell you, some of those teachers, they didn't have any patience whatsoever. But that kind of in that environment that I was dealing with a lot of there was a lot of tribal mentality, a lot of tribalism um, working there um, in that school. And I worked in the special ed department, and there was, you're either in or you're out with certain groups of people. And there was a certain individual there who made herself the queen of the special education department, and would strong arm, people. She literally got people fired um, because she didn't like that they weren't doing what she said. Um, and I could get into details, but I had to I had to have patience in the fact that working in the school system, especially in high school, there were so many unknown variables. Um, and there, I was working more with other teachers, working more with more aides. So I had to learn the patience of you know social interacting with coworkers who don't like you, and they don't like you because they see you as a threat to the power structure that they're trying to create, or they hate their job and they see how casual and laid back you are and that everyone likes you, um, and they don't like that. They don't like that you stand up for yourself and that you protect your job. And I was dealing with that, so I had to also be patient of the fact that these people would bully me. They would try to get me in trouble. They would try to make me do things that were actually their job, their responsibility. And I would stand my ground, and that was something that wasn't easy for me. And I'll be honest, that job, it took out a lot of self-confidence I had in myself. um, I really was beaten down near the end of near the end of the year. The last year that I was working there was the hardest year. And by the end, I was beaten down. I was done. My confidence had just been depleted because I went from one tough situation in the summer into another one. They were both very similar in terms of working with kids, and both of them I had to leave on my own terms. Someday I'll get into that story. Um, but I bring up all of these life experiences because you know they teach you patience. They teach you so many other so many other life lessons. But if you're one of those people who still are struggling with patience, and even people around you are telling you about your lack of patience, um at that point it requires your willingness to change your mindset. And that's the reality when it comes to anything in life. Any goals, any responsibilities, any life changes, you know, you got to get into that mindset of willing to and wanting to make that change, and wanting to be a more patient person, and wanting to learn the patience from your life experiences and not be ignorant towards them. You're going to have to take that time and get into that mindset. Whether that means, if you can afford it and If you have insurance, maybe that means getting into therapy. That's one possibility. Or you can start reading books on patience and the virtues of patience and how to be more patient. You can start meditating. I mean, that's I do that every single day, meditating. You can even pick up yoga. I do yoga every day, you know, 30 minutes to an hour. So and I'm just starting, with yoga. Keep in mind, I don't want you guys to think I'm some guru. I'm just starting. But those are ways to help you with your patience. Picking up a hobby. If you're struggling, and like I said earlier on, if let's say you have patience, perfect, great patience at home for all the home situations, you have great patience, but at work, you're struggling. Okay, well, then you need to find a hobby, find something that will teach you that patience. Because, whatever you're struggling in with that situation, find a hobby that can relate to that kind of patience. Maybe, dealing at work with social interactions. Maybe that means going online and playing a video game with groups of people, whether that's, Call of Duty or Among Us, any of those group games, you know, that requires patience because no one's gonna want to play with a jerk. No one's gonna want to play with someone who's constantly impatient and rushing and getting on everyone's ass. So if you're gonna start, especially playing with complete strangers, they will call you out. They will harass you. They will troll you. So and then you're gonna get a rude awakening and be like, oh, well, damn, maybe I really need to settle down a little bit. So you need to find things that you know that can teach you to be more patient, or take the things in other aspects of your life that you're patient about and see if there's any commonalities with what you're struggling with, whether it's work or with your relationship with a loved one. See if there's any commonalities that maybe you can take there and apply to the other aspects of patience you're struggling with. But like I said, that takes changing your mindset. That means taking a, as I like to call it, a deep dive within yourself. You're going to have to take a deep dive within yourself to figure out why you struggle with patience. And not everyone wants to do that. Hey, that's okay. But that's your choice. You're going to have to live with the consequences of that. And if you're perfectly okay with that, then you must be one hell of a narcissist. And I won't hold that against you. But there will be many people who will, you know. And with changing your mindset, especially when it comes to being more patient, it requires, like I said, you to acknowledge. It really requires you it really requires you to acknowledge, and this circles back to um, last season's episode. It really requires you to acknowledge everything in your control. And if you allow yourself to become impatient with the things that are in your control and not in your control, especially the things that are not in control, that you're not in control of, you will make impulsive decisions and actions. And these can have drastic effects on you and the outcome of the situation that you're in. And you have no one to blame but yourself. Because when I say, being patient means you have to acknowledge everything that you're in control of. All of the situations that I brought up, especially the one with the student, the only thing I was in control of in that moment was how I reacted to the situation. Do I panic? Do I get angry? Do I start screaming? Do I use brute force to restrain this kid and use my anger and hurt him and the his classmate? Or or do I take a moment to breathe in the moment? I had three choices. Two of those were impulsive decisions, impulsive actions. because rather than taking a moment to breathe, to be patient, I would react irresponsibly. You can look at a samurai battle. I mean, I use a perfect example. If any of you watch Star Wars: The Mandalorian, spoiler 3, 2, 1, Ahsoka Tano and the magistrate of the planet had a battle. Now, the reason why I'm bringing that up is that if you look at sword battles, any sword fights, you can watch classic samurai films, Kurosawa films, The Seven Samurai, Yojimbo, whatever you want to watch, any of those films, even recent ones, 13 Assassins, any of those, anything, any sword battles, even animated sword battles, um, even Dragon Ball Z martial art fights. You have to be patient in those moments, even when you're moving fast. Even if the sword is swinging, there could be bullets flying, whatever. There could be fists flying. You have to be patient as well. You can't be impulsive. You have to react to the reactions that you're seeing. You have to be in flow. You have to be in the moment. But you have to be calm. You have to be patient about it. When I was struggling with that child, I was calm. I was patient. Was I scared? Yes. Was I nervous? Yes. But I was patient. And because I was patient, I was able to think more clearer. I was able to make better choices. Because in those kind of moments, a man my size, he could react in a bad way and hurt a child, lose his job, his reputation, could end up in jail. So many things. Those moments when you feel impatient, when you feel impulsive, you have to take a moment and breathe. But this takes training. This takes effort. This takes meditation. If you really want to help with your patience, meditate every single day or have a mantra. In those moments where, you're feeling impulsive or impatient, or you're having negative thoughts or in the moment, from use that mantra, come up with a mantra, say it, repeat it. But it takes practice because, the thing about patience, especially when you take a moment in the patience to look at a situation from an outside perspective. All right, think about that. When you're patient, you're looking at a situation from an outside perspective. Because when you're not patient and you're just in it, you're in it. You're only seeing what you want to see, the blinders. You got the blinders up and you're just going straight ahead. But when you're patient, the blinders go off because you're able to actually see around you. You're able to see what's going on. And that is the most important thing because it will give you the necessary clarity and help to make a better decision, even if that is a millisecond of a moment. That patience can change everything. And being in the moment, moving with flow is also being patient. Letting things, focusing on what you can control and just trusting the process. That's patience. That requires patience. Are you willing to invest the time into that patience? And you have to also remember that, like, don't take it as I'm some expert in patience and that, I can just be patient and wait for anything. No. All right. You have to remember that this is something that you will continually learn and improve on. All right. It's not something that's set in stone. Everything that you will learn to make you a better person is not set in stone because you have to keep on working on it. You can't say, oh, well, I have achieved the ultimate level of patience. All right. You can't, you can't say that, you know? I'm ultra instinct patience. No, don't work like that. Um, it doesn't work like that. There are times where even I'll catch myself, um, where you could be behind someone who's driving really slow, and I'll use this as a perfect example. There's a dude that was driving so slow. All right, it took all of my strength, all of my patience, not to just whip across the other side of the road, um, to do it. And there are times where I could have done it. It would have been risky, but I could have done it. But I didn't do it until we got to a split in the road, and one way it went left, and you got to keep on going straight. And I booked it and cut him off. But anyways, listen. The point I'm trying, the point I'm trying to say, the point I'm trying to say is I'm still learning. We're all still learning. All right. I didn't cause an accident or anything like that, but I did speed up really fast and make sure I had enough distance so I can get over. And it didn't even matter because I was like 100 feet from my destination, and even I knew it didn't matter, but it felt so damn good. Oh god. So I think that's the only reason why I did it. I was like, yeah, I've been patient this far. I need to fucking book it. Apologize for my language. But like I'm just saying, is like you what's great about being patient is just seeing the outside perspective, you know, and it's something that you continually learn. Like I just gave you an example of something that happened a couple of weeks ago. You're gonna continuously learn how to be patient. And I even acknowledge afterwards, I'm like, that was stupid. And that's the best part. If there are moments where you become impatient and you make a decision, it doesn't matter what it is. If you can acknowledge that what you did probably wasn't the best idea, or you should have waited, be proud of yourself because at least you're holding yourself accountable. And that's the most important part, holding yourself accountable. That is holding yourself accountable is key in the art of living, just as much as patience is key in the art of living. And, for me, I pride myself on being a patient person. But that doesn't mean, like I was saying, where I don't have moments where I'm feeling impatient or impulsive. And I do. And most often than not, I'm good to not act on those moments. And other times I'm not. And I acknowledge it and I move forward from the mistake because you have to move forward. I'm learning and I'm getting better at not um, beating myself up. That's something that I am an expert at. And I acknowledge, and not everyone does this, but you have to acknowledge that the feelings that you work towards retaining patience is is instrumental. It's so important to yourself because you have to acknowledge in those moments when you're being patient, and maybe it's a situation where you're normally not impatient. Be proud of yourself. That's all I'm trying to say, and that is in many ways self affirmation. That's self care. That's self love. Wow. You know what, man? I was waiting in line today, and I didn't complain. I didn't even complain to the cashier. I just waited, even though it took 15 minutes. I paid and I was out the door and I didn't even complain or anything. Be proud of yourself for that. Not everyone can do that. And you didn't like suck your teeth or be, kind of passive aggressive to the cashier. And that's the worst part about being impatient is you start becoming passive aggressive. How many of us, when we start becoming impatient, we become super passive aggressive towards family, friends, strangers. Like I said, it could be the cashier, it could be the bus driver, it could be the waiter, the waitress. I mean, think about that. And that's, passive aggressiveness. Being passive aggressive sucks. Anyone who's like that, like, you got to work on that. Please, please, please work on that. And if you're someone that's struggling with it and you're trying, I believe in you. Keep on working on it. I believe in you. But that's something that frustrates me about being impatient. And even with myself, you become passive aggressive. And that's not healthy. And that is a, probably the most important reason why anybody needs to work on everybody, I should say. Everybody needs to work on their patience. Because when you become impatient, impulsive, you become passive aggressive to everybody. I don't care who you are, you know it's true, you know it's a fact. And that's all I got to say about that one. But you got to remember that you're always learning. And the characteristics that we pride ourselves in are our strengths. Our strengths. Bleh, can't talk today. And they can always be improved. And you know what? The best part about our strengths is you can take some of that strength and you can apply it to your weaknesses. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not like if you're someone who, like, for example, you're super, super confident, very confident in yourself, very reassured in yourself, but you're not patient. Take some of that strength and apply it to your patience. You're not going to lose any of your confidence because you're so solid with that. That's it's not going to stop fueling itself. It's not. It's just never, it's going to keep on going. It's going to keep on fueling itself. And you can take some of that strength. You can take some of that fuel. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't think that you're going to lose some of your strength, your confidence. You're not going to lose it. I can show you you're not. Because that's one aspect of yourself that you are very reassuring. But there may be a something, a critical life situation that you experience that may diminish that. I'm not excusing that. But until that happens, you're going to have that fuel. And there's no problem with taking that fuel and applying it to other aspects of your life that you're struggling with. It doesn't have to just be patience, but patience was the primary focus of this episode. So don't beat yourself up. If you're still struggling with being patient, you're not. Don't beat yourself up about it. And if you're struggling with that, be patient. And if you're struggling with beating yourself up and struggling with be patient, well, I don't know what to tell you. Meditate. That might be the best option. I don't know if I'm probably sure at the end of all of this, someone could, take every time I said, meditate and make it into a 3 hour film, or I should say 3 hour audio clips. But you're going to always be struggling with being patient because there are going to be aspects of your life where you are struggling with being patient there. That's okay. Just keep on working on it. Be proud of yourself when you hold fast to your guns. And, that's all that really matters is that self affirmation, that self care, that being proud of yourself, patting yourself on the back. You know, it's okay. I do it all the time. It's really healthy and it's important because sometimes you're not going to have someone there to say, "Oh, wow, Kios, good job on your patience today. I'm really proud of you, man. Thanks." You're not going to always have someone there to do it. So you got to make sure that you do it to yourself. You know, we're all struggling with being patient. Do not forget that. I'm going to keep replaying that. I'm going to keep saying that. We're all struggling with being patient. We all are. But you just have to find a positive and healthy way to be more patient and use those tools to help to move you forward. Everything I say today about how I, work with being patient and why it's important, everything I said today, if there's anything there, take what you like, take what works best for you, remix it and apply it to your life. You don't have to do everything that I say. If there's some things that you don't necessarily agree with, that's okay. Then, prove me wrong. I'm okay with that. I don't mind being proven wrong, especially if I'm not right. But I am right that patience is important. You can't prove me wrong on that one. All right? I got plenty of patience for that one. So, that's all I got to say about this, people, is that we are all going to struggle with being patient. But it's up to you to choose how you're going to handle that patience and how you're going to move forward. You can have friends and family that can support you and motivate you and, call you out on those moments when, hey, you're slacking on it, you're slacking on it. And that's important to have that support. But like I said, you're not going to always have that support. So I highly recommend, and I highly recommend, and I highly recommend that you take that support for yourself. Say you're proud of yourself. Go, if that, let's say you were really good today with whatever, with that patience that you're struggling with in that aspect of that aspect of your life, treat yourself to a sweet, a cookie, your favorite candy bar. There's nothing wrong with that. Treat yourself. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Monday Mindset. To learn more about myself and how you can support the Monday Mindset, head over to my Patreon page at Ronin Art and Music. That's Ronin Art and Music. If you're listening to this on your preferred streaming service, please make sure to subscribe. If you're listening on YouTube, make sure to subscribe, leave a comment and review. Slap that notification bell. On iTunes, please make sure to subscribe, rate the podcast, and leave a review, as this will help me and the podcast grow. Stay positive, stay focused, stay true, and much love.